Okay,
Got
great. So we are very honored to have Matthew Rozsa here today. He is a professional writer whose work really speaks for him, commenting on multiple national media outlets since 2012 and exclusively on Salon since 2016. He receives a master's degree in history from Rutgers Newark. Also, I attended that as well. It's primarily how Matthew and I know each other. In 2012, recipient of the 2022 Science Journalism Fellowship award from the Metcalf Institute. And I think most notably, Matthew has interviewed many well-known people, historical figures even. I'll just list a couple that you may know of, starting with President Jimmy Carter, Israeli Prime Minister Barack, animal scientist and autism activist Temple Grandin, comedian Bill Burr, also novelist James Patterson, voice actor Rob Paulson from the Animaniacs. I don't know if people remember the Animaniacs. So also actor George Takei, famous from the Star Trek series. Libertarian President President candidate, that is Gary Johnson. Democratic Vice President nominee Joe Lieberman back in 2000. And even the actor Roger Bumpass, who's a voice actor for SpongeBob SquarePants, and of course the right-wing insurrectionist Roger Stone, which is a long list, a brief list, but there's so much more. So I just want to give a warm welcome to Matthew Rozsa for coming in to talk with us today. Thank you very much, Matthew. So Matthew, just to give you a little bit of orientation to this class. So
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, there were some issues with, yes, can you hear and see me?
I can hear and see you.
Are we having issues?
There was a bit of instability.
What I was thinking, I'm going to make a suggestion. Why don't I just start talking if it's working, and then if there's a problem.
Yeah, there's a problem right now.
How does that work?
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Like the video is cutting out a bit. This is unfortunate. Can you hear me?
If it cuts, yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. The video is a bit choppy, so please take it
That's
away.
That's fine. I'll live with it. I look choppy in person. It's actually not the video. I have to confess to your class, you caught me. I am a choppy human being, and what you are just seeing is the natural choppiness of my existence. So let's just, now that my shame has been exposed, I will discuss Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And before I begin, I'd like to ask everyone, if you saw the movie, don't turn the laptop around. Don't touch it. I'm afraid if you touch it, it'll break. So let's I'll take your word for it. How many? I can't hear or see anything.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, we can hear you. It's a bit choppy, but we can hear you.
Well, I can't see if anyone is anyone saying whether they've seen the movie?
How many people have seen the movie? Yeah. Pretty much the entirety of the class. About 85% of the people in the room have seen this movie, Into the Spider-Verse.
May I make a suggestion? It's a risky suggestion. Turn the laptop around so I can see them.
You got it. Totally.
I'm worried that it'll destroy the feed, but I'd like to be able to see them so we can have a conversation.
How's the video? Good.
Like I said, I'm a naturally choppy person. I apologize for it. Anyway, how many of you have seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? How many of you read one or both of my reviews for it? Okay, so the first thing I would like to ask is, what did you think of the movie? Which of my reviews, the positive or the negative, spoke to you the most? Ryan, I think you're going to have to decide who to call on. I don't have control over that.
Does anyone volunteer their perspective about which one they like? Yep. We'll be here for one person and give a little bit.
I'm also going to make another.
Sure. Yes.
Whoever speaks should
stand up
to the laptops so that I can see and hear them.
Okay. Yeah,
for me to hear you.
Someone volunteered to kind of give some feedback about the review.
You all saw the movie. You don't have to talk about my review. Just talk about What did you think of the movie? I mean, if all of you saw it, or most of you saw it, you have to have an opinion.
Yeah, Sarah? Come on up.
What approach? Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much.
That's how we're going to have to do this. You're going to have to approach for me to hear and see you. I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Matthew Rozsa.
Hello, my name's Sarah Mansour.
So you like the positive review?
Yes, I definitely liked the positive review more because Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was, to put it simply, it was the most inventive use of animation I had seen in a long time. I went in thinking it was going to be standard CG, knew nothing about it, and was instantly blown away by all the techniques used. And I feel like the whole Spider-Man mythos really comes and bolsters that, because the main narrative is about fusing all these different aspects of Spider-Man together into a history that speaks not only to us as fans, but to us as people, because we see all these different fusions of 2D animation, 3D animation, and it's an entire story that is told in the art and in the music and in everything. And I love the movie.
Nice.
That's a great response. That's actually a great response, particularly for a review, because it was well-rounded. You included various elements from the animation to the music to the characters. That's something that I and all other critics strive to do. So the positive review was my latter review. Does anyone have a concurring or contrasting opinion to what Sarah said?
So it seems like most of us liked the film, okay, but maybe for different reasons. Does anyone have a different reason?
Or how about this? I initially did not like the film. I panned it. Now I reevaluated that assessment, but I will play devil's advocate and recall the man that I was when I didn't like the movie and explain why I didn't like the movie at that point. I thought the fan service was indulgent. As at that point, film critic, now I'm on the science beat, I saw superhero movie after superhero movie after superhero movie where they're referencing each other, whether through meta humor, like in Deadpool or the Lego Batman movie, or through the Avengers films, which require previous familiarity with a whole universe of cinema. And the fact that these movies aren't self-contained, the fact that they require homework, I believe, is a complicating factor in terms of one's ability to relate to the narrative. I have at least one friend who said she couldn't follow any of the movie because she didn't know anything about Spider-Man. I also, at the time I saw it, found it obnoxious, just over the top, excessive. Now, you might notice in my first review, I didn't say I hated it. I just, at that point, emotionally, that constant fan service struck me as egregious. When I watched the movie again, I realized that the emotional aspects of the story, the heart in those characters, was so palpable that it overpowered the elements which I had previously disliked. So do any of you have anything you want to say to me? However negative, I can take it. Trust me, I've been trolled. There's nothing you can say that I can't handle. But what are your thoughts on why I originally felt the way that I did?
Yeah, Emma, would you please come up to the
Come
front?
forward. I hate to repeat that, but I won't hear you otherwise.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
I'm
Well,
Emma.
Nice to meet you, Emma.
Nice to meet you. My point is about, you're talking about the movie being like egregiously fan service based, because I agree with you. I'm coming from the standpoint of someone who is a very big like Spider-Man comic book fan, and I go watch all those movies, and I agree with you that a big problem tends to be like the actual meaningful story getting subsumed by all of these other like interconnected jokes and like making you understand things that aren't actually happening in the movie. My opinion about Spider-Verse is that it's actually one of the few movies that used fan service in a way that actually like meaningfully supported the story. So even though, yeah, maybe there's an extent to which some people aren't getting at all the in jokes, there's still like jokes that are helping you like access the emotional core. So for me, I was actually something where I really enjoyed the fan service, and I have not enjoyed it in a lot of other movies too, because I do think it gets in the way. But that was like one of the points in the first review that I was very like stuck on, because I was thinking about it from a very different like perspective. But I do think ultimately it works towards the emotional core.
I agree with everything you said. The opinion you expressed now is the one I had the second time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I was annoyed by it. And I think that speaks to something which is important in film criticism, which is your emotional watching a movie will influence how you see the film. I mean, there are movies that are absolutely beautiful and powerful, but if you see it after you've had a terrible day, you'll hate it. And this is an example of that. I actually can tell you, it was a blizzard when I went to. You don't have to keep standing. I feel like you're standing. I'm not your instructor. I have no authority over you. You can walk away from me anytime you want. I am literally just stuck in this laptop. So, but yeah, I was a blizzard when I had to go see it. Maybe I was in a crappy mood. Who knows? Forgive my language. I said maybe I was in a foul mood. Because of the blizzard. But
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Hey,
Ryan?
Matthew. Yeah, I actually had a question about your reviews too. It's like, is it often a maneuver where reviewers reverse their decisions, after they've considered it for a period of time, or is that unique? And also, does that in any way kind of for your audience question like your judgment on films in general, or is that like a conscious move that you've made?
It is unusual for critics to do it, but there are famous examples. Roger Ebert famously panned the Vince and actually said that the original. So that is something that can happen.
Okay.
One of the things that I want to discuss, though, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Were you going to say something?
No, I'm just it's a little unstable.
All right. You had been saying earlier to me, Ryan, that you wanted to talk about history and movies and whether it's important to have historical knowledge in films. And I'm curious, when any of you saw this movie is a rich tapestry of cultural, historical, political, social, economic themes. Was there anything in the film that resonated with any of you personally when you watched it? Because as a critic, that is part of your job. It's not just to look at the surface, it's to dig under the skin. And do any of you feel a connection to this movie deeper than just being entertained?
Yes.
I see someone raising it.
Thank you. This is Jack.
Hey, hi there.
Hi, Jack.
By the way, I realized when I heard you were coming, I saw your face and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy I always see on Rotten Tomatoes. So I read a lot of your stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. But for me, what really resonated with me about the movie, getting choppy.
You froze. I'm sorry to do this. You're going to have to repeat yourself.
It's all good. For me,
Talk now. It's good.
But for me, what resonated was the message that anyone could be Spider-Man. Anyone can wear the mask, and that's the thing that they kind of repeat throughout the movie. That's like one of the last things that Miles Morales says. I think it's interesting that it's all these different versions of Peter Parker, and yet the theme that it kind of hammers home is that it's not about Peter Parker. It's about Spider-Man it's like the spirit of Spider-Man. Anyone could be Spider-Man. So I just thought what they did in the movie, the kind of multiverse shenanigans actually built up to that, and that's what kind of made it really special.
I agree. I completely agree. It actually, I can. You don't have to keep standing. I feel bad when you guys keep standing and you're comfortable. But I completely agree. And I actually had a similar reaction when rewatching the movie before this class. I noticed a quick scene when you're introduced to Peter B. Parker, the character voiced by Jake Johnson. There is a moment when he is being married to Mary Jane Watson and he steps on a glass. That is actually a Jewish wedding ritual. The man steps on the glass, both to symbolize the fragility of marriage, which in the case of their marriage clearly did not work out, and also to go into Jerusalem. And so that establishes Peter B. Parker as Jewish. And when I noticed that scene, I then began to think of other similarities, like he is 38 years old, I am 37. He is overweight, I am in shape because round is a shape. I saw similarities between myself and so, yes, I agree. Having the ability to send that any speaking.
Can't.
What happened? Can you hear me?
So yes, we can hear you. There was a glitch for a moment, but we're back. I think
All right. Where did you lose me?
we were just talking about everyone can be Spider-Man, and that you felt some kind of affinity with Spider-Man with all these different things. You know, the age, the Jewish traditions and things like this, and that's where we left you. Oh gosh. Okay, Matthew, I'm going to try to hotspot from my phone to make this better. I really apologize. I'm embarrassed with all the technology.
I made a point. I guess the next one, or maybe at least actually, I'm going to revise. If any of you, okay,
Okay, I'm going to try to hotspot for my phone and make this a lot better. Okay, we're gonna have to. I'm sorry. 7. Okay, so are you there, Matthew? Matthew, can you hear me?
can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see and hear you. Let's start
Okay.
this over.
So I hotspotted my phone. It should be going good now.
We got through 3 questions. I think that was good. My next question for all of you is, are there any movies that you would want to review? If there was any film about which you could write a review because you have a really strong feeling about it, what movie would that be and why?
So if you have a response, just raise your hand and then we can bring you down. There should be a question that's on top of your head because there's an assignment for associated with this too. Jack, do you want to respond to that? Sure, please.
Hey, hello, me again.
Hello.
One that I would love to review at some point is the Coen Brothers movie No Country for Old Men, because that was like one of the first movies that I saw that like really made me know that I kind of wanted to go into film. And I think there's so much stuff about like the shifting values of morality in the modern age. And it sounds kind of pretentious, but I'm just summing it all up into a couple sentences. I think there's so much interesting stuff with like good and bad and how that has kind of become gray in the world. And I just think there's a lot that could be digged into in a review. And also it had an impact on me personally as well.
First of all, that's the best kind of movie to review, is one that impacted you personally. For instance, I delivered a lecture about the movie Unbreakable because that was a film that impacted me personally. I loved reviewing it for Salon when the sequel Glass came out. And in terms of your point about No Country for Old Men, it's interesting because when the Coen brothers won the Best Director Oscar or the Best Picture Oscar, whichever one, for that movie, in their acceptance speech, they made a comment about how the Academy had allowed them to play in the sandbox, that in their minds, they were just having fun. And now here they are making a career doing what they enjoy. And that really is what will make, in my opinion, any good movie good, is that there has to be at the heart of it a love of what you're doing, an enjoyment and a passion for what you do. And I sense that, Jake, you're interested in filmmaking. Is anyone else here interested in filmmaking or film reviewing?
So we have a couple of people here. I don't know if you can see. Did anyone want to offer their opinions about film reviews or their passions for filmmaking? Aiden?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aiden.
Hi,
So,
Aiden.
hello. To answer your question, a movie that I would want to review is The Way, Way Back. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think it released in 2012, around then.
I've never seen that.
It's with Sam Rockwell and Steve Carell and Toni Collette. It's a coming of age story about this guy his parents are divorced and he stays with his mother for the summer. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to summarize it here. We would be here forever. But it impacted me greatly because I just found myself relating to the protagonist as this sort of really introverted kid with self-confidence issues. And it really touched me to sort of see how he grew over the course of the film. And I'm just really passionate about that movie.
I can see that, and I think that's great. If you ever write a review, and this is true for any review, you don't have to keep standing. This is true for any review, is you have to start with a paragraph, and this is going to seem like a silly rule, but it is actually important. You have to include one paragraph at least that covers the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, because not everybody who watches this movie is going to know the things that you do going into it. So what is the basic plot? Don't spoil it, but for instance, if this was about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I would write something to the effect of, there is a teenager named Miles Morales who is bitten by a radioactive spider, etc. You have to summarize the plot. Who are the major actors? Who is the director? Who are the writers? If there is any prominent music associated with the film, who made that? Just the basic details that someone who wants to see this would need to know. So, for instance, Aiden, with the movie that you mentioned, you would need to give me a paragraph explaining all of that. Jake, the same thing for you and No Country for Old Men. I'm sorry, Aiden, I'd never seen The Way, Way Back, so I didn't remember the title immediately. Then, after you've gotten that out of the way, what I find for me is effective, and I noticed that both Aiden and Jake mentioned reviews that had a personal, emotional significance to them, movies that had a personal, emotional significance to them. You can include that in the review. You can mention your own life story and how that makes you appreciate the film, because again, that's what the reader wants to see. They're not interested. Once you get out of the way the 5 W's so that somebody who knows nothing about the film can understand the basics, then you get into, why am I as an individual possessing an opinion about this film that you, a stranger, should find interesting? And the personal element is often crucial for that. You also do want to include thoughts on the aesthetics. Thoughts, like I remember Sarah earlier mentioned how much she liked the animation in the film. That is a valid point to raise in a good review, because the animation was a notable feature. It won Best Animated Picture at the Oscars. You mentioned the quality of the acting. Are there plot holes? For instance, my observation about fan service, even if you disagree with it, is certainly valid. I thought that led to, if not plot holes, certainly an inability to access the movie without prior knowledge of the lore. Those are all valid things. If it's a comedy, did it make you laugh? If it's a horror movie, were you scared? Those are the questions that you need to get into for the remainder, for the meat of the review. So for any of those movies, yes?
I have a question. What about historical information that, not a film like Spider-Man, right? How do you construe that historically? Or how do you like understand that film historically? Not necessarily as like a product of history, but like as a conveyor of historical knowledge. Can you how would you pull out like historical information and insights from that film?
I will actually refer to a different Spider-Man movie, the first 2002 Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. None of you were old enough to remember when it was released, but in the summer of 2002, that movie was everywhere. You could not escape it. If you were alive and had money, you saw Spider-Man in theaters. It dominated at the box office. And there is a scene in that film, a scene that today people laugh at as being corny, where the Green Goblin is attacking Spider-Man, and all of a sudden, New York City surrounds him, throwing objects at him, saying, "We're New Yorkers. If you attack one of us, you attack all of us." It seems so corny today, but September 11th, 2001 was one of the worst terrorist attacks in American history. It left a literal hole in the middle of New York City, and it was such a terrible tragedy that it caused a national trauma. That scene of those people assaulting the Green Goblin, saying, "We're New Yorkers, we stand up for each other," that captured the spirit, the sense of unity that existed for a period of time after 9/11. So though it might seem cheesy and jingoistic, even if you think of it in those terms today, in the context of 2002, it was inspiring. When I saw that movie in theaters and that scene occurred, there were cheers in the audience. People were like, "Hell yeah." And I live in Pennsylvania. We're not New Yorkers. So that's an example of something that you can extract from a film.
Right. Yeah, so that's like the primary assignment that we have for the films that we're reviewing in this class is like extracting historical insights from it, even from a film like for example, Escape from New York, a fantastical narrative. But we're trying to like understand that historically, like what does that say about the moment in which it was released, but that's really helpful to understand that, like also situating the film within a particular historical context, like 9/11. I think that's really helpful to understand that.
Exactly. And by the way, Jake, you did that earlier with No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is set in 1980 and was released in 2007. Those were both periods in American history of great transition, for various reasons that I don't want to segue into too much, because I do want to see if anyone else has a movie they would like to discuss. Anyone? Any movie? Let's go to the other extreme. A movie that you hate. A movie someone raised their hand. I didn't want to kill your answer. Oh, but now you raised your hand for a movie you hate. I can't control this. There we go.
Hi. I'm gonna
Hi.
talk about a movie I love. If I were to just like do a film review on a favorite movie, it would probably be But I'm a Cheerleader.
I've seen that.
Good.
I've
Okay.
seen that.
Love the culture. There aren't that many films about lesbians and queerness that are like specifically centering on lesbians. There's a lot of movies about gay men. But the lesbian movies I have seen, this one and Carol in Mind, have like an incredible amount of like color theory in them. Like there's a lot of like bright neon colors. This one has a lot of like blues and pinks. Like obviously we're dealing with like gender roles here. And then also like the satire is great. We got Natasha Lyonne, Clea Duvall, RuPaul, like you can't go wrong. So those are my thoughts.
Do you have a personal story? I know you said you have a personal connection, but do you have a story that you could share? No, I'm not saying with me. I'm saying in your review. When you write this review, that's what you do. You put yourself into it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, totally. My personal connection is that I am a lesbian. And I saw this movie for the first time during like COVID quarantine when I was living at home and felt like very disconnected from like a community that was not just my father. So it was very important to like watch that movie alone in my childhood bedroom and like feel connected to myself again.
That is something you should say in your review. Like it's because that's what makes a great movie great. Again, you don't have to keep standing. I feel bad that everyone is standing.
Thanks.
Does anyone dare answer the hate question? Are there any movies that you hate? You hate a movie, person over there who I can't see.
Sarah's coming back.
Hate
Oh.
movie you hate.
So I'm sure there's several movies that I could say I really hate for their terrible production quality or general sleaziness of plot. But I'm going to go and be contentious, and I'm going to say Frozen.
Frozen.
There are several reasons that like, does anyone else hate Frozen?
Listen, let it go.
Sorry,
Go.
but like first one and second one, arguably. Second one is worse than the first. First one, I did not like it. Sorry, I'm kind of going. Generally, the plot is nonsensical. It makes no sense. It puts too much pressure on the, oh, can't marry a man you just met, without actually looking at the story they're drawing all these inspirations from and looking for something they can say there. It's like they're trying to be modern without even taking what they have from the absolute bare bones story they even do, and it leaves it bland and tasteless and not quite as pretty as snow. And the reindeer is completely inferior to the previous horse mascot they had, which was a non-talking palace guard horse. 3 cheers for Maximus, anyone who knows Maximus. Thank you. Maximus from Tangled, who was himself a much better character. And actually
You're
had a
cutting out.
character. And that is part of why I do not like Frozen, but mainly it is bland and tasteless, and Idina Menzel's singing is only one little glint of prettiness there. Thank you.
Nice.
You should put that in a review. It would get people will read it, I assure you. Listen, you know what? I somewhat agree. I thought the movie was charming. I am not the target audience for Frozen, so I watch it with that in mind. But certainly, I have only seen it once. I've only seen the first one once. I never saw any reason to watch it again, and I've never seen the sequel. So, but at the same time, I thought Generation Z loved Frozen. Your answer shocked me.
Yeah, some of us don't.
Matthew, why do you think Generation Z like Frozen? Just because it's like a timely thing that they grew up with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, we liked some movies in our generation, Ryan, that do not hold up.
I mean, really, I can think of a couple, but you're right. Yeah. But
Yeah.
like, it has like a nostalgic quality, at least for me, you know, it's like, oh, I remember when I was little, when I was watching that and so on, but I get that. It makes sense.
Yeah, but nostalgia is not an inconsequential factor. I guess I just want to see, since I'm running out of time, do we have anything to say to wrap this up? I see time left is 2 minutes, 45 seconds.
Oh, you see that too. Okay. Castor, did you want to convey something?
Yeah.
Come on in.
I have to warn you, you have 2.5 minutes.
I'll be quick.
Go.
I hate both of the Avatar movies. I think they're terrible. We have agreement on that one. They're the most boring, like Wonder Bread stories I've ever seen in my life. The only thing that's cool about them is that they both have really good VFX, and James Cameron is an asshole. Just respectfully.
I heard you. You cut off right before you insulted James Cameron. You cut off right before you insulted James Cameron. I actually didn't hear that.
Did you say good effects? Good.
Yeah.
Great VFX. James Cameron is an asshole.
Okay. Jeez. I mean, like that could be like, because like when we were growing up, like that was like the blockbuster hit, and part of it was like, oh, I want to see it in IMAX. I want to have that experience, you know. And most of it was like technological. I get that the plot is just like kind of like simplistic a bit, you know, and just like not much, you know.
It's the same story.
I know.
However, I will say I actually recently interviewed a linguist who created the conlang, the fake language in the movie. The language spoken by the Na'vi is created by a man named Dr. Paul Frommer. And if you want to check out my interview with him, regardless of I mean, it's kind of interesting because he created a whole language for a movie that you don't even think is good. So there are a number of ways of construing that. But I have 60 seconds left. So anything else?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and speak with us. You know, really honored to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a wonderful time. I hope you all go home tonight and watch a great movie.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you,
great
and
evening.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.